As you can probably see, we are all about fantasy here with SUBSUME as well. So the fantastic, particularly in comics and animation and games, is just near and dear to our heart. And just for me, that is really in my wheelhouse. So I'm very excited to bring up our next guest as we get ready to talk about building Black digital fantasy spaces, and a program that I hope to you needs no introduction, but we absolutely will be delving into. We want to talk with the Studio Twin Drums and call Allan to the stage. Yeah. Allan, how you doing today? Good.
I'm great, thanks. Yeah, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir. I hear you just fine. Thank you so very much. Good to get some audio. I know we're good on Discord, but it's always great, to chat and connect with you again. I know you're very busy, and I want to thank you so very much for your time.
No, it's my pleasure. Really, thank you for inviting me. And by the way, as a heads up, unfortunately, I seem to be having issue with slides, so I'm going to be guiding through what we do with our words. Hopefully, that's fine as well.
Oh, that is just fine and not a problem. So thank you so very much. So Allan, just while we have you to kick things off, would you please just give a quick introduction to yourself and your work as I look to bring in a link for people to take a look at the Kickstarter. We'll make sure that people are aware of this fantastic program and how we can support. So please introduce yourself.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So my name is Allan. I'm African European. Grew up in Italy. I'm from Ghana and Italy, so West Africa, Southern Europe. Currently based in winters in Africa, in summers in Europe, so I kind of go where the sun is. And after working for many years in various game development companies, I started my own studio called Twin Drums, with the goal of increasing representation of Black stories and characters in the gaming industry. And currently we're working on a game called the Ouagadougou Chronicles, which is the first African-inspired MMORPG.
Oh, and I'm dropping the link in the chat right now. It is just it's a masterpiece. I don't know what to say. Of course, we've been connected on this from jump, but at the same time, to see it in the real world and see it thrive behind the scenes with just fantastic story, an amazing team behind it, as well as just a fantastic space to the front, to what's coming up. I just had to, again, I'm all about just sharing this stuff. I feel blessed to know about this project. So please, let's take it from the top. Again, I know you said that, as a game designer and a game developer, that you had been working on programs, but there hadn't been anything like this. We're both, RPG and MMORPG fans. And again, we don't get this, right? And this is an idea that is so ahead of its time. How did this come along?
Yeah, thanks. And it's really experience. I mean, I realized a few years ago that in my imagination, I love, for instance, tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons on top of video games, and I run a lot of my games, and even as a teenager or young adult, I used to create a lot of adventures even before becoming a game developer. And I realized a few years ago that all of my stories and my experiences I was creating for other folks always had Black characters. Even fantasy or futurism sometimes, but especially fantasy, was very, very white, right? So elves were white, dwarves were white, and I didn't question it for a long time. I just accepted that everything that was related to the past and kind of ancient history was white, And then when I started questioning it, because growing up too in Europe as a white person, I know you know that experience, right, of being a minority. You realize, wait, there's nothing wrong with me. It's maybe the story that's being told that is wrong. Something is missing. And I had this privilege, of having a mother who's still very connected to the continent. She lives in Ghana. I'm actually now in Africa as we're currently speaking. So I started digging and I realized there's so much culture and music and aesthetics, and it kind of all connects between the various diasporas, from Central, South America, North America, Europe, Africa. There's this beautiful tapestry of stories, of languages, of music and rhythms. And I was like, why isn't there many more? Why aren't there many more RPGs that showcase this, and that it's like so much wasted potential. So, and I literally had some interesting conversations too in some of my workplaces where I had, and I'm really sad to say this, they were awesome workplaces, but I had people telling me I'm not sure about adding more Black characters. We should be careful about our audience. It might be too much for them. It's fine to add a couple, but we cannot make the whole cast Black. In the meantime, Black Panther happened, and I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of having these conversations. I'm just going to start my own company, and every character is going to be black. Period. So that was kind of like how the idea started.
Just amazing, and just one thank you for that, and that's absolutely true. And you had a couple of points I want to touch back to. It's the idea of that. What's wrong with me and what's wrong with my story, right? Because as you say, and again, that's been a kindred spirit of our love for Dungeons and Dragons and writing characters that exist in their natural space and in the cultures that we know, but it not being truly, in a lot of senses, accepted or appreciated, in those traditional spaces. So we do have to make our own, which is just fine. But at the very same point with myself and Sorghum and Spear, when Dark Sun came out, I was all ecstatic. Okay, there's going to be diversity in this box, and not so much, right? It was just something where it was like I've got to do it myself. And so for our work with Sorghum and Spirit, SUBSUME, that's how that was born. And so it just goes to show that it's never a point of talent or ability to be able to tell our stories, and it's definitely not about asking for permission. So again, that's why I felt like you and your work with Tree and Drums is just fantastic. So please, let's take us through the Wagadoo Chronicles. What is when we're using our words because we are the initiated, the MMRPG and things like that. What is the Wagadoo Chronicles currently?
Yeah. So it's two things. On one hand, it's a Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition setting. So, you're very familiar with your work. And we already released, by the way, a free module of 200 pages. So if you're listening to this and you want to have a look, we made a lot of free material. Like, we're doing what we can to spread the word, empower all of you folks, brothers and sisters out there. So it's already available if you subscribe to the newsletter. You can find it on our Discord or Twitter, Instagram. And this is very much about rethinking Dungeons and Dragons from an Afrocentric perspective. I remember once I was speaking with a design director at a company, white Caucasian American, really lovely guy, and he told me how emotional it was for him to go to Europe for the first time as a teenager, step into a British castle and see like a knight's armor. And going like, wow, this is all real. All of these stories I heard about, all these video games I've been playing, all these D&D sessions I had, they're based on, and my ancestors did this and it's awesome, And I thought like, we should have this as well because we have our own amazing history. If you go through all of the kingdoms around West Africa, Southern Africa, East Africa, all the mythologies, and so the Wagadoo Chronicles builds upon this, but as a fantasy world. So it's magic. There's like creatures that have horns and turn into lions and so on. And you can play it either as a D&D setting, as I said, or the second part of it is as an MMORPG, which is due to the size of the project, currently the biggest part of the company. So we're working on both materials for the tabletop and video game. And that will be released next summer. There is an alpha coming already this month. So, and that if you subscribe, actually we'll be sending out keys in the next couple of weeks. But these are kind of the two pillars of the, please let me know, I can provide you. These are the two pillars of the project. And the reason too is because I believe that video games and tabletop are part of a spectrum of telling stories. And, tabletop is like you with a bunch of friends sitting around the table and it's full creativity, but it's still very small. Whereas MMORPGs allow you to have these experiences with hundreds, if not thousands of people and becomes, this is like a table for a tabletop game, but like a massive, 1,000 people big table, which I think is very exciting.
No, you're right. And we get the best of both worlds with the work that you have here now. So again, very thankful. And for those who, I'm going to just put the link back up again. I know we have some folks that may have come in earlier to show, just to make sure that comes along. But at the same time, this is not only stunning work, but necessary work. Because when we're talking about it existing on the tabletop is one thing, but for it to exist in the digital sense, where it does have the ability, at least from your home table, to reach that many more people. How has it been received from not only within our current game community, but where do you see it going from here?
Yeah, so far, like the first part, the tabletop part has been received really, really beautifully. And I'm super grateful to everyone who has already downloaded it, commented, we have a thriving community. And I think it was a bit of a surprise because we went viral on Twitter a while ago, and I was expecting maybe a very specific buzz of certain people, kind of like fellow Black folks going like, yeah, this is awesome, this is so empowering. And then it already became much bigger. And I think this stands as well to show that our history, our Black history, is for everyone as well. I think that was the first lesson there. It's like, this is something, look at Black Panther, right? It's like a predominantly Black story. Look at the characters, look at the cast. And that's one of the reasons to why Hollywood held back so long on such films. And then, it sold 175 million tickets around the world. And most of these tickets are not Black folks. They're, Caucasians, they're Asians, and so on. So I think that was a big lesson. It's like, everybody wants to know about these stories. And I realized too that our cultures are kind of part of this massive color palette. Like I see cultures like colors, like green, blue, red, and so on. And when you think about fantasy, futurism, stories, media in general, why would people want to limit themselves to watching only paintings in red and white or in blue and yellow when you can have the whole rainbow? And I think telling our stories is basically bringing back those colors that are missing, that are hidden. Maybe we know about them to some extent, but they're hidden to most of the world because of colonialism and slavery and everything that happened to us across the world. So that was kind of like a big surprise, positive surprise from a reception point of view. And now we're moving towards the video game space as well with the MMRPG. And that's interesting as well because there is a bit of a stereotype of gamers being a bit conservative, like the average gamer is a white cisgender dude, sometimes a bit racist. And so there was a bit of a concern, I must say, from my end and from the team, because many of us are, of course, Black, POC folks, queer folks, I am myself. And there as well, we have realized that the reception has been very positive. People are really curious. Some of them are like going like a bit, I don't know what this is, but I'm just very interested. And, and we're like, fine, you don't need to be, like super woke. We're even happy if you come in from a place of ignorance and then learn something and grow with us. Of course, we have had like those wonderful messages as well of like queer folks in Kenya telling us like, this is so awesome. We're feeling so empowered because, by the way, as a pre-colonial inspired game, we are like representing queer traditions too, because before white colonizers came to Africa, there were so many traditions of like different genders, of like, people getting married, not just like with a typical monogamous heterosexual relationship. There were like so many spectrums and ways of living your identity and sexuality throughout the continent that got wiped away by basically Victorian laws that came in from Europe in the 19th century. And, being able to showcase this through our game, and of course interpret it in a modern way as well, has been very, very empowering. And so we've been getting the feedback from all sides, within the community, out to the community. This is happening for the video game as well. So far, I would say very, very exciting and in a positive and surprising way.
No, I think it is completely well-deserved, right? Because as you say, the idea of being able to create the fantasy and the fantastic, identity of sense of self is based on history, right? That, from our cultural is much more expansive than even in the sense of, as you share, the cisgender, heteronormative, Eurocentric standpoint, which is absolutely prevalent in tabletop and RPG games and in gaming in central. But the idea that we can't imagine the fantastic sense of agency of our own selves, but we can create fantastic creatures to exist in these worlds. But when our humanity is challenged, at least our perceptions of such that don't fit in that normative space, that's when things seem to get racist, right? Or bias or prejudice or sexist or what have you. And that's why, for me, when I started our work, and likewise, I see for yourself, that we wanted to be very intentional, right? That we were going to make sure that, in honoring this past and this legacy, and again, being true to history, that there was a space where this existed. It wasn't always, things aren't always as they are now, right? Nor shall they remain. But even in the past and in the future, there's stories that are either left out or untold, or again, stories that need to be made. So again, why I applaud yourself, and again, just saw so much of the things that when I worked with Sorghum and Spear, I was able to see in yours. So it was just an instant love. So now, again, I want to give a quick shout out to your team, who likewise, as you say, represent a lot of the diversity that is going to be necessary for projects, not only just projects like this, but projects in some, whatever our space that we're in, are going to be necessary to move into a shared future.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you to you again for what you're doing. And very much, yeah, I agree that the team itself is a big part of all of this, being able to give a voice to, minorities, people who are not represented out there. And it has affected, in our case, to the Wagadu Chronicles in very positive ways. Like, for instance, one thing I made sure from the very beginning, that the team was always 50% or more in some periods we've had of women and non-binary folks. And I, as a cisgender man, of course, I'm a Black man, queer man, I've gone through certain experiences, but I haven't gone through the experience of being a woman or a non-binary person. So there were many things that I had to learn to myself, within the team, and that was awesome. So I think we're learning a lot. Like, for instance, one interesting example was how the art director, Iga, who's a woman, she just naturally, without ever having a conversation about this, drew all of our first concepts primarily as women. So the first different people and magic folks and so on of Wagadu. If you look, and it's still a thing actually, if you look at across our free lore book and even like the upcoming materials and the stuff we're sharing on the internet, there's a lot of women, and that was never something we sat down and said the Wagadu Chronicles is going to be full of strong women, but it just happened. And I didn't even realize myself till someone asked me at the conference, so I have a question, why is it that 90% of your art is women? And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. And it just happened. And you realize how our unconscious bias, there was an interesting research too on video games a while ago, actually a sad one, that showed that if you put, for the average gamer, actually perceives a world as mostly, like on the background of a video game, as mostly female if 50% of NPCs are women, not 51. So I think actually they have to reduce the amount of NPCs on the street of the video game to 30% for most average man gamers to perceive it as equal. That's because of how biased we are, towards this male-dominated with patriarchal world. So then, on the other hand, I had this director woman, this awesome artist who was just doing lots of women because she was seeing herself represented, and that reflected itself to me later on. I had another event where two women came to me and they had studied the lore by heart. I was like, oh my God, these women know the lore better than I do. And they were like, yeah, we saw all of those women, we felt empowered, and we were already running some games. This was in Italy, based on the Wagadu Chronicles. So this is was just unexpected side effect of having different people in the team. And another one is, for instance, the elements of the lore of Wagadu being, for instance, one example is how we don't have this strong good and evil kind of conflict, which is, was popularized through Tolkien, but is very much based on Western, Christian view of the world. And then we have a much more nuanced view based on spirits and ancestors that can be good or bad, but it's more depends on the context, and it can be very transactional, and they're more real people, no one is, or almost no one is truly 100% evil or good. Everything is very nuanced. And for instance, for me, my experience with going to Ghana and rediscovering our ancestral shrines, there's still some priestesses in my family who are officiating ceremonies. There's some shrines in Accra, and exploring this story, and there's no good and evil gods. There's just gods that have different requests and ancestors that, that's something that went into the game. And having, these connections, these experiences, or another one too is being many of us from the diaspora, the idea of reconnecting with a lost heritage is part of Wagadu's themes as well. You literally fall into Wagadu and you've lost a lot of your memories. And that's something that resonated with many of us because, I myself had to rediscover a lot and go back and ask questions to my mother and my grandmother. It's tell me more about our history. And, and for some of us, from this someone in the team from, the Caribbeans or the US and so on. And there's a lot of reconnecting happening there, which is kind of trickling into the themes of the game, so rather than having shining knights in armor, there's characters who are rediscovering their past and their culture, and who are dealing with these entities who are neither good or evil. They're just part of their past, and they have to negotiate how to deal with them. Nature is another one. Lots of traditional African religions are about nature and about respecting nature, and nature is alive, and trees can be gods, and rivers and mountains and the sea. So all of these things, elements of our cultures, are going into, and our own experiences, into the game. So again, I think it's awesome you mentioned the team, because having a diverse team is so important.
Oh, absolutely.
And it does translate into a better story, a better world, a better experience, hopefully for the players.
No, I'm sure it will. And to that point, navigating yourself and your team to this point of success where you have a partnership with Riot Games, right? That now the next phase is to kind of build and develop, in partnership with them. What are some next steps for, I guess to say before we even talk about that, for you and Twin Drums? Obviously, you built a fantastic programming process. And Riot and the programming with Riot Games to be one thing. Where else do you see that there's an opportunity to kind of share this sense of being that, again, where we both see from the fantastic in RPGs and in gaming? Is there a better call or bigger call for this for the gaming space they're in, for technology, or where do you see the future of being able to bring this type of inclusion being impactful as well?
Yeah. Thanks. By the way, if you hear dogs, apologies. That's my mom. That's
no worries. No worries.
Yeah. It's like a background music, they're adding to the conversation. But anyways, it's a really interesting question. And actually, it's we've gone through a process. We went from like being bootstrapped and basically having to struggle with savings and almost wondering, is this going to work? Are we going to manage to go through this? To going through a Kickstarter that was very successful. So thanks so much to all the backers out there that allowed us to show, hey, this is something someone wants to play, and both on a tabletop or video game platform. Then Riot Games came in and they were really awesome because they said, we want to support different creators. We're looking for solid projects that are different. I'm very grateful to them as well because they're giving us financial support and to some extent logistical, which is great. But for the future too, we are going to keep on growing. And that means that the next steps you will see is like us very likely getting a publisher. So someone who's very focused on kind of the marketing, distribution side of things. And I think that's a very exciting phase for us to find who this partner is going to be. Must be someone who understands, of course, our mission because yes, we're a company planning to be profitable, but at the same time, too, we have a social mission, right, to change the conversation. And these are kind of a bit different from maybe many other companies working on a Eurocentric fantasy game. So that's kind of like the big next step. And I think in general, too, like our goal is to expand the IP. So where can the Wagadu Chronicles go? Already, like having tabletop and video game is working quite well. But we want to, peek into other perspective, other worlds, see like where can we go. So I think there's a bit of like a challenge for us that we're a small team. So it's probably going to look like collaborations. I think that's going to be very exciting. So this is kind of the next steps. And in practical terms, we're going to be having an alpha running at the end of this month. So if you want to help and test, please actually apply to our newsletter. Next year will be the release of the game and all the books.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure, of course, not only will we be supporting and collaborating, but we'll make sure that information gets out as we conclude our program here. So with that, just lastly, where can I'm going to put the link back in, but is there any other way in this outside of the WagaduChronicles.com? Is there any other spaces that we can find to show support for you in this fantastic program?
Yes, so absolutely, thanks. Twitter is great. Discord, there's a link to Discord on Twitter, Instagram, so we're on social media very active, but I'll say primarily our newsletter and Discord, because we'll be sharing there like info on future keys for alpha testers if you want to come into the game. We'll be sending more lore material. The free lore book, 200 pages, are on the newsletter if you join. So I said these two places, Discord and newsletter, are the best places to get the news and support us, be updated on the releases of the game, upcoming betas, and so on. So yeah, that would be it. And thanks so much, Dedren, for giving me this space and platform to talk about.
Oh no, I think we're just waiting for some cool collaborations to come, and again, just very, very excited. So again, my thought with Black Futures Month is making sure that not only do we talk about the space and place, and I think for Allan, I appreciate you making sure that we have a space and a place. Make sure I get it back in there. I want to make sure to get you say goodbye. I know you're saying there might be some lighting issues. No worries. I was just saying that, we want it to be thankful to be able to find, a camaraderie and a partnership with folks that can see the value, not only of the fantastic, being existing in games and on the tabletop, but the fantastic sense of self, existing with our collaborators and our teammates and with our family. So it was just great to hear from you in this work. Again, you got some brilliant folks on that end for sure. This is a great way for us to stay included in our shared future. So again, thank you so very much, Allan. We'll be talking soon, brother. Take care.
Thank you. I'm so excited to see where we're all going and how we're expanding this space in future. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so very much. We'll be talking soon. Thank you.